That voice that we have inside our heads when we're running that can sometimes be pretty harsh, cognitive scientists and psychologists call it the inner critic. For some of us, it's always loud and negative, and for some, we don't hear it much. And for many of us, it's going to depend on the situation. Sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, but the key here is you're not alone. Science has shown we all have it, and the great thing is we can all use it to our advantage, and I'm going to show you how.
So we're going to go on a 4-part journey together, and part 1 is going to be this part. Why do we even have an inner critic when we run anyway?
Then we'll deal with the research of how the best approach it and how we can get the best out of ourselves.
We're going to deal with ways to quieten down the noise in ways you might not expect.
And I'm going to give you the approaches and actual sessions that you can use so that you can be the boss of your inner critic and not the other way around. And it starts on my easy run, which is never easy in Thailand. So part 1, why do we even have an inner critic at all? The main point is we all have an inner critic, no one doesn't, and it's rooted in the brain's misguided desire to protect you. It comes from 2 places. It comes from evolution and it comes from childhood experiences. In running, I most often see it when I'm about to go out on a run like now. It will tell me I'm too tired, or I'm not prepared enough, or I'm not good enough at this point, or I'm not fit enough.
Or when I'm out on a run, I'm getting stuff like right now, I'm getting the whole, come on man, it's too hot. You can just walk this one and then head home. You don't need to run it. That's what's happening in my head right now. Sometimes I get like, you're not fit enough to run this pace. You should be slowing it down. You should miss this one. You know, the classics. And from an evolution standpoint, this one's really easy to kind of work out, isn't it? Is back in the day when food was scarce, our brains would have to tell us that we're in danger if we're wasting energy, if we're expending energy like doing something like running, when we should actually be conserving as much energy as possible. So you get all of these negative thoughts and emotions, and really what that is our brains saying just, let's conserve energy here, and it's using weird ways to try and stop us. That's the easy bit to understand. But then there's the life experiences, childhood experiences bit. That's a little bit more nuanced. And I like to explain that one by telling a story that I heard from the head of the FA psychology unit when I was at university. He came in and he told us a story about the Scottish Commonwealth Games team. Essentially, he had a room full of people that were going to the Commonwealth Games in athletics representing Team Scotland. And he asked that room who were the best at their chosen sports or athletic events when they were growing up. It was not very many, it was a handful. He said who was top 3, maybe a few more. Most of those were top 10. Now, as a teacher, I see this a lot. Parents and teachers telling children when they are young that they're really, really talented and really skillful, rather than praising the effort. And what happens when you do that, when you're a child and you're told you're great, or you're told you're talented, or anything like that, it doesn't have to be in sport, you put your self-worth into that. I'm talented, I'm good at maths, or whatever. So the first time you can't solve a maths problem, the first time you get beaten in some kind of athletics event, that's your self-worth gone, because the who you were was attached to the thought of you being talented or able, rather than the kid who tried the hardest. That voice, that negative voice that tells you you're not good enough, gets amplified.
And how loud the inner critic isn't just if you were a high performer as a kid. That's just an example. Reasons vary from how you were praised by family or coaches, emotionally unpredictable home environments, whether you had embarrassing or shaming moments growing up, constant comparison to others, or even just general stress or trauma in childhood that bled into sport. The important thing is that to understand this is to have power over it, and that is our start point.
But this is the bit I need you to hear. You have to take this bit in. Everybody has this negative inner critic. You're not alone. It is amateurs to the world's best. We all have it. The difference is what we do with it.
So what does the research say? I love this bit, by the way. Like, I'm a proper research geek. And in order to name it and frame it to tame it, we've got to understand how to do those things. And we're going to go back to a study about swimmers actually. A researcher called Graham Jones and his team studied 97 elite swimmers and 114 non-elite swimmers, and they looked at lots of different markers like their pulse rate, their perspiration on their skin. They asked them about their feelings of anxiety and stress and nerves before a race. And what was really interesting was that every single one of them, 211 swimmers, all of them felt the same nerves. It wasn't like the elites didn't feel nerves and the non-elites did. They all felt the same, and that's reassuring and encouraging. But the difference was how they saw it. The elite swimmers saw those nerves and those feelings as facilitative, as in positive towards their performance, and the non-elites found them debilitative, as in they were a negative, they were a sign that this performance was going to go badly. And that's the key to this part of the video. We're actually aiming at building psychological flexibility in the same way that you can build physical flexibility with stretching and mobility work, because it's never about not being nervous. It's about what we do when we feel nervous. Let's put this in a running scenario straight away. I know the perfect scenario. I'm standing on the start line and I'm feeling those feelings. I'm feeling those nerves. My heart rate maybe is a little bit up, and I might have voices in my head telling me, I'm not ready for this. I'm not good enough to be able to do this. This is gonna hurt. And here's the thing. I'm not going to try and ignore those thoughts. We'll get into why a little bit later. I'm going to accept that all they are is thoughts, and I'm going to let them go on their way. They don't linger. They just happen in my head. It's the way of my brain, as we've said, trying to protect myself. You see, the feeling that you refuse to feel or acknowledge, it doesn't go away. It waits. So anytime you try and suppress any type of negative thought that you have when you're on the start line, your brain is going to go, right, don't think that negative thought, don't think that negative thought, and it's going to search your brain to find that negative thought. So why not acknowledge it, because it's going to happen, and then just allow it on its way. And you might be thinking, well, hold up, I'm standing on the start line and I'm getting all these physical cues. I'm getting clammy hands, I'm getting elevated heart rate, my legs are feeling heavy. They are all real. There's no denying that, but it's the story that you attach to those feelings that is the negotiable bit. So before we move on, and before I give you these real world mental applications and practical physical session applications that you can use to be better at this, it is worth saying that the one thing that you can use to underpin all of it and drive you in the right direction is having a value or set of values that mean that even if you think those negative thoughts, and even though you accept them, you are then still committed to drive forwards. Mine simply is about helping other people, inspiring other people, and also being the best person I can be every day until the day that I die. With that behind me, it allows me to have those thoughts, it allows me to acknowledge them, and it allows me to send them on their way without too much more thought. So I can be committed whether the voice is loud or quiet, and I've picked up a lot of tips along the way that allow me to do that. That's what I'm going to share with you right now. Part 3 on the trusty treadmill, which I know a lot of us dislike, so I'm going on there on purpose. So now we know we need to accept the thoughts. That bit's a given. I'm all right with that. So that's the frame it to tame it bit. But there is also another trick that you can do that most of our membership community do, is you can name it. So in our membership community, they've named their inner critic Bob. Now you could name it whatever you want. Bob is just a name that some of our, I don't have a name for mine actually, but a lot of our community have Bob. And the reason that we name it is because it makes it something that is outside of us, as in a critic that we don't like that sometimes shows up. And when Bob does show up, we greet him, so we don't ignore him. We kind of say, yeah, I was wondering when you might turn up, Bob. Nice to see you. And you almost make a little bit of a joke of it, and that is giving power back to you. And that's the name it part. So we've now named it and framed it to tame it. I'm a poet and I didn't even realise. So in this part and on this run, I'm going to give you the mental tips and tricks that you can use to not avoid that inner critic, but I guess placate or calm the inner critic. And then in the next part, I'm going to give you actual sessions that you can use to do the same thing. Okay, the first tip is the easiest. It's the difference. It's knowing the difference between worrying and visualization. So they're both forms of thinking about stuff, but worrying is essentially thinking about the problem and doing nothing about it. That's the bit that causes anxiety. Visualization
is mentally preparing for any eventuality. That is having a plan, that's preparation, doing something about it. The best example of this story is Michael Phelps. He visualized so many different scenarios when he was swimming at his peak. One of them being, what happens if my goggles come off in a race when I dive into the water? And guess what? In one of his Olympic races, that happened. His goggles filled with water, and guess what happened? He won a gold medal because there was no anxiety, there was no worry. He'd already seen what he would do when it happens, and then he just swam blind and he won the race because he visualized that eventuality. And a good running example from my perspective anyway, especially in a marathon, is when I'm running, you know, I worry sometimes that I'm standing on the start line and then I'm running with a high heart rate, and that kind of spanners my plan before I've even started. But if I just did that and stood on the start line and worried and did nothing about it, then yeah, it probably will blow up my race. What I try and do in a lot of my sessions, this one, lactate threshold, is play around with controlling my heart rate. Can I slow down and can I actively get that heart rate under control? What types of things can I do in order for that to happen? Like, I visualize myself doing it in a race, but even better than that, I practice it in sessions. Like, what can I do to best control my heart rate in different circumstances? And therefore, it's not new on race day, it's not something I've never done before, it's not a foreign concept. You're not going to like me when I say this, many of you are not, but just hear me out, because I'm not saying you've got to completely redo your whole training. But see these things here? These can be the blockers to what you're feeling and thinking inside. Lots of people spend entirety of their running career with headphones in, listening to podcasts, listening to music. And when you put your thoughts externally into something else, you're not thinking internally, you're not even able to kind of get a feel for what's going on the inside. So you're cutting off that feedback loop at the source. I'm not saying that what you've got to do now is never listen to music or podcasts again. But if you run 5 times a week, maybe start with 1 run in 5, take those headphones out, dial into what's actually happening, the thoughts that you're thinking, because training here is as vital as training these things down here. By the way, it is worth saying that visualization of like things that are going wrong is not the only thing that you can do when it comes to visualizations. Things like these work for Mary and I, by the way. When I'm in the toughest times in a race, I literally visualize myself standing at the finish line, and then I just think, is that version of me at the finish line proud of what I'm doing right now? And that encourages me to keep my effort high. I just give what I can on the day. It's not always fast, I don't mean that. What I mean is, if I can finish, if I can step over that finish line and give myself an A for effort and impress that version of me standing there, or even better, that 95-year-old version of me that's looking back on my life, did I always try my hardest? That really pulls me into a next level of effort, and I pretty much never let myself down because of that. Okay, and if those mental alone tips are not good enough, let me give you some of the mental stroke physical where it's attached together. These are amazing. The first one is actually physically say out loud that you're excited, that you're ready. The feelings that you're feeling are not enough. Interpret them in a positive way. So say I'm ready. I used to say it with all of our cross-country teams in the past. It's not nerves, it's excitement. You get to choose how to frame it. Attach that with a change in your body posture. If you're like this, it's a closed stance. If you're slouched, it's a negative stance. The cues that the body feeds off are also physical, not just verbal or mental. So if you're standing upright, if you're open and relaxed, essentially you're stacking evidence so that the brain can make the correct interpretation for what's going on. If you're in a start corral, joke around, be relaxed, have fun with your friends or the people around you. And this is the key one. Tell yourself it's going to be hard and that is okay, you've prepared for this. I get a lot of criticism sometimes on YouTube where people are like, I don't want to think that my marathon is going to be hard, I'd rather just have a lovely time. You've run marathons before, right? Inevitably, in everybody's marathon journey, there's going to be hard points. To just ignore them is what we talked about earlier. Acknowledge that they're going to be there, but also that it's going to be okay, because this is hard, but we do hard things. And finally, attach meaning to feelings. So if you're feeling nervous, if your legs are shaking, that's great. I'm switched on. Name it. But I will say there is one place above all, almost the Valhalla of running, that we do need to seek. And it's a place where these thoughts, positive and negative, quieten down to almost nothing. That place is called flow state, but you might know it as the zone.
This is my favorite place to be. The zone, flow state, where it's quiet. And when I've had my best race experiences, I can't even tell you what I was thinking about. I cannot look into it and know. And this is an interesting story. When they spoke to elite level rugby players that had had good games and bad games about the thoughts that they were thinking whilst they were in those games, the players that had had bad games, they could list off this thought, this negative thought, that positive thought. Didn't always have to be negative, but they could tell you what they were thinking about throughout the entire game. The players that had had good games and you could argue were in flow state could barely name a thought that they had during the game. They just did. And that's the quietening of the negative inner critic, but also the positive. When you're in flow state, thought doesn't really happen as much, and then the processes, the movements, the performance becomes automatic. And that's where we are trying to get to as runners. And I've got a few sessions that I would like to share with you that I do and I give people that I coach to help them access flow state or the zone more readily, more often, and so that they can maybe, hopefully, access it during a race. There's a few sessions here, session 1, but we call them blind efforts. So sometimes I ask my runners to go out and do a blind 5 kilometers, and what I'm asking them to do is run easy for 5 kilometers, but I'm also getting them to dial into, without looking at their watch, so blind, a pace. It's got to be easy, and their aim is to run all of those 5 kilometers or 10 or whatever you want to call it at around the same pace. If you run them all at 5 and the last one 5:01, you score 1 point. If you're all over the shop, you add up the points. But the aim is focusing on what's happening on the inside, the feel, the process, not listening to a podcast or music or thinking thoughts about the stress of your job. It's really trying to dial into what is happening during this run. And you can do the same with tempo runs. I sometimes ask people to run 20 minutes at what they think is tempo, cover their watch up, and then we look at the data back afterwards. Sometimes it's zone 2, sometimes it's zone 4, sometimes it is tempo, but it's about trying to feel the internal processes of what's happening, and then you're not thinking any other thoughts. We have sessions where we try and come up with trigger words or mindset approaches. So sometimes I'll tell people to try and come up with a word whilst they're on their run, that if they feel their mind drifting or their technique falling down, they say a word and it brings them back into the moment, a run in the now style of session. For me, if I ever feel like my technique is falling down or I'm not concentrating, I say hands, and it allows me to unclench my fists, relax, finger and thumb together so that I know I'm running relaxed, and it makes me turn my hands inwards because I've previously been injured by having my palms facing backwards. Again, something where I'm focusing on the now, the what is happening right now. I'm not thinking about work or a problem or anything else. Or if you like fartlek, which is obviously speed play, playing around with your speed, what I ask runners to do is I go out for an easy run, but anytime they can feel their mind wandering onto something that's not in the run in the moment, they have to just speed up a little bit until they can bring their mind back into the now. And when they've been able to do that, they can slow back into that easy run. So it's all about learning those mental cues, tips and tricks to bring yourself into the moment and ultimately, hopefully, flow state. Like taking gels while you're training your gut. The more you try to do these things, these sessions in training, the more likely you are to train your mind to be able to do it in a race and access flow state. And I'm going to leave you with this quote from Novak Djokovic, which I think sums it up really nicely. Doubt is the price you have to pay for being in the arena. Doubts are proof that you're attempting something that matters. So don't try and ignore them, accept them, use the tips, tricks that I've given you, and then let's hope you hit flow state on race day. If you like this video, you're definitely going to like the 6 running decisions that I often see killing progress immediately, or you're going to like this video, which is the first in the series towards us training for Chicago Marathon. I really hope this helped. Let me know if it has. If you've learned anything, let me know. And if you've got your own tips, leave them in the comments. And don't forget, consider subscribing. It means a great deal. And we'll see you next week.